you know what I thought was interesting is we haven't seen Stephen Thompson in a long time, a long, long time. He did very, very well today. Very, very well. Against an uppercut. He's undefeated. Jeff Neal was undefeated in the UFC. It's on a stupid. If you count his Contender Series fight and his fights before in LFA, believe it was in LFA. He was on like an 8-fight win streak or something like that, and got to fight someone as good as Stephen Thompson. He's a vet, a true vet. He's fought for such a long time. I just felt like Thompson dominated him.
Yeah.
Just technically, just so technically sound, especially striking wise. He's just always moving off the line, constantly, even when he punches, always moving off the line. I thought he was brilliant. I thought he moved really, really well. It was weird with Jeff Neal because he was always looking for that one punch, and when he connected, he wouldn't follow up. He would just connect, and then they would move, and he would shell up if Thompson ever started striking again. But fuck, did you see Thompson's leg though?
Yeah, I did.
Fucked all around his knees, huge amount of swelling.
Yeah, I mean, Dana White, even though he hasn't got a champion to come out of his Dana White Contender Series, but he's got a good eye for killers. You know what I mean? Like, you can say what you want about, the Stephen Thompson. Okay, he's seasoned. He's very seasoned. But there were points in there where this Jeff Neal guy was. I was like, whoa, he's giving him a run for his money. If he's an upcomer, again undefeated. But you told me that undefeated doesn't really account for much when you've only had quite a few fights. You know what I mean?
He has had a few fights in the UFC so far. It's just against someone as tricky as Thompson, he's not just like a karate fighter. It's his movement that is so unorthodox and moving back and forth. It's not like a lot of these Thai fighters that stay stationary, then move and just move diagonally and things like that and just bang. And they're just really powerful. But every time Thompson moves off the line, striking, moving. Even in the clinch, he was getting good knees to the body and things like that. So
he loves his side kicks.
He does. And he did very well doing. That's probably how he fucked his leg. Actually, I thought it was interesting that the post fight interview, he calls out Jorge Masvidal, the nicest motherfucker versus the baddest motherfucker. That's an interesting fight I want to see. We've seen it before. It's a rematch.
Yeah. Then there's the question we got to ask though: do we want to see Jorge versus Thompson, or do we want to see Jorge versus Colby more?
I saw that as we put that up on our social media and said, well, do you want to see Jorge versus Stephen Thompson? They said, yeah, but I'd like to see him fight Colby. I think Colby is way more interesting. If Jorge's just came off a title shot, who better to fight than Colby? Because Colby also wants the next title shot again, and Jorge wants to get back in that mix. Because I don't see Jorge or Colby or Thompson, because Thompson said he said he wants to, mark my words, I'm going to be the 2021 welterweight champion in the UFC. None of them want to fight unless it's a step towards the belt. Colby's lost his shot, and he beat Tyron Woodley, former welterweight champion. Jorge lost to Kamaru, but he was on late. It was very short, late notice. I think, was it 10 days? Something stupid.
He lost by decision, and it was a very boring fight as well.
It was very boring. A lot of foot stomps, a lot of just clinching, but not much work in the clinch or anything like that. I would like to say that Jorge versus Colby is way more interesting than Thompson versus Masvidal, because we've already seen that fight before, and it was, I believe, by unanimous decision. It was a while ago, and fighters make leaps and bounds, especially people as good as Jorge. But I would like to see Jorge versus Colby. That'd be such a sick fight, honestly.
The amount of trash talking that would go into that fight.
Oh, dude. And if you, hopefully by then, you would have a crowd.
Yeah.
Right? Because we were watching the Canelo fight just earlier, and they had maybe 30 to 50% occupancy. They actually had a decent enough crowd where they can yell and scream, and a lot of people can get really engaged in that fight, and they can draw from the crowd. I feel like Jorge and Colby really draw from the crowd.
Yeah.
Colby with the boos and Jorge with the amount of cheering for him, because he's so charismatic. So I want to see that fight.
Yeah, a lot of Well, next year, hopefully they're bringing back the crowds. Well, obviously they're going to want to bring back a crowd for McGregor versus Poirier. So, but I feel like we're starting to get crowds back in because I believe there's some states in America now that where crowds are allowed. I think Texas was one of them.
Yeah, I mean, I know America's having some time, progressing with the whole COVID pandemic and that, but Australia and New Zealand could quite easily have a fairly packed
That's what I was thinking. Just
fight.
give it to us.
Yeah, bring it
to Perth.
bring it to Perth. Yeah, that would be such a good way to start building fights again in Australia and in New Zealand, because we already got footy matches and rugby games and things like that are already got people in the audience, and that I know basketball and NBA, they have a little bubble, they have some people on the court and that, but it's not the same. A lot of countries have progressed way better than America. We know that they're going to have Conor McGregor versus Poirier at Abu Dhabi, and a lot of big fights have been put at Abu Dhabi because, you can have some people there watching, but they have really stringent controls and things like that. I think Australia and New Zealand would just have this just as good controls, and you'd be able to actually fill up to